You just got clickbaited. See, I hunt max these titles, but I don't really try these ones. And no power on earth can make me try the cock and ball torture that is the PS2 duo. Altogether, I must have close to 2,000 hours, which is absolutely nothing by Monster Hunter standards, where people with 10 times that amount run amok with speedrunning channels everywhere. But I digress. I've been playing these titles since a friend had Freedom 2 on the PSP with no localization, just straight up moon runes on the screen. For the longest time, I thought Xenogre was called Genoga, playing Portable 3rd with an unofficial English patch. You can imagine how I was absolutely ecstatic about Wilds. It would fix my life. It would cure cancer. It would bring about world peace. Instead, we got an early access title, but without the tag. Look, I know Monster Hunter fans would die for Capcom if asked. I don't want to get carved and made an armor out of, and I won't watch time engagement bait you. The game is straight up unfinished, but the core gameplay is the best it's ever been. Just wait a few years to try it. And try to understand that this all comes from a place of love. Because the moment you run it, you see the elephant in the room. It runs like absolute Xenogre shit. Just go watch Digital Foundry's video. Performance is atrocious and it's a blurry, muddy mess. Half the skills being bugged does not help either. And the story. Oh my god, this campaign. It's egregious. Full of awkward exposition and forced Red Dead walk scenes where incredibly subtle metaphors like Arkwell the chained prisoner are hammered into you. 10 hours of this bullshit. Older titles knew to not have the story get in your way as they knew their priorities. Team A is under some delusion that big console games need to have big set-piece storylines. It's like they learned nothing from World. Wherever I got to try it, immediately quit due to that campaign. Speaking of learning nothing, the fuck is this UI? Multiplayer is needlessly convoluted. Oh, and SOS barely works. Just like World. But I'm a massive Monster Hunter glazer. I can cope as long as the act of hunting monsters itself is good. And boy is it good. As a Freedom Unite boomer, I believe in proactive positioning. And the idea of every weapon having general parries and dodges is cringe to me. Or at least it should have been. Wilds' combat feels like a perfect modernization of the series without feeling overly gimmicky as the modern titles often do. Perfect guarding just slots right in and makes Greatsword and SNS guard actually viable after 2 decades. Perfect dodges are overpowered as shit, but they feel great to do. Offset is absolute cinema, and I love how it needs 2 business days of prediction. Wounds are just a less disruptive and shitty tenderizing, and still a solution in search of a problem that does not actually exist. I can take it or leave it. Focus kinda sucks. Sorry. It's the one gimmick I don't like. It's janky to engage unless you play ranged, and Greatsword should not be able to 180 during a swing. It removes any thought from melee. But it's still fine. You can ignore it as a mechanic without throwing, unlike silk bugs. I've seen people talk about difficulty, and yes, low rank is incredibly easy, but the rest just seems okay. I think people who started with World got better over time and did not realize it happening. Tempered Gore shits on Tempered Nergigante, and this game came with a one-shot raid mechanic monster on day 1. Monsters just seem to have way too little health overall, which is probably the actual issue. High-rank Rathalos in Wild seems to be on par with Azure Wrath in World other than health. They also run way too fucking much, which is infuriating, which they said they would fix in the beta and never did. This shit needs to go. Weapon changes could be better. Gunlance got remade, and it's great, and for most everything else the new general mechanics are enough to revitalize them, but not all got equal attention. Charge Blade guard points don't count as perfect guard, while Gunlances do, which is an absolute travesty. And Bow no longer needs to craft ammo, but bow guns do. Like, what? Why? It's quite frustrating to see overcorrections and easily observed oversights hold back some weapons, but this is something Capcom does in each title. Maps are mediocre. They alternate between way oversaturated and drab as shit. There's nothing but a wow factor as there was with Coral Highlands and World. But new monster designs have been pretty great. Heat-sink lizards, jittery flower spiders. I've always loved Team A's plausible and another world designs. I also love that cephalopods are now a thing. Variety is the spice of life, and skeleton types matter more than monster count itself. Guardians are just filler with Guna paint though. They could have ported more from World overall. Still, I think it's a competent cast for launch. As for skills and builds, honestly, not much to say. It's the same as ever, where you cram as much attack and affinity as possible through generalist skills with easy to achieve uptime. Limiting slot count or dividing them arbitrarily does not fix anything. I'm tired of how some always useful skills like Vex are essentially mandatory to take and have been for 3 games. Capcom needs to rethink skill design, something they've never really done, and the players themselves don't really question this, but being incentivized to stack burst and Vex and whatever should not be all there is.
This should either be baked into game mechanics itself, or they should give so many slots that you can take the necessary stuff and do whatever on top, the latter being the route the expansions have taken recently, and they likely will this time too. Off the top of my head, they could have just split skills as attack and quality of life instead of attack and armor. Because when aggressive stuff like Agitator or Maximum Might are armor skills, it defeats the point of the split.
Also, weapons now partake in this topic. I'm sort of at a loss. All this does is further limit making builds, because why in fuck would you use a lance with crit draw? The whole monster weapons have a stat theme consistent across all weapons is sort of a dated idea and results in a complete lack of weapon variety to begin with. Unless you're willing to gimp yourself with classics such as low element bows and low raw elemental greatswords. It's been this way since day one, so we don't really question this, but the one time they try and change it, they just make it worse. You must have noticed that almost anything I don't really like about the base gameplay is stuff that is tradition at this point. It's more gripes with the general series. For the most part, everything Wilds itself does, it does great. And what matters the most, the core combat, is excellent. So why in hell am I still bitching? Because there's no content to actually engage with that excellent combat. You know, the actual meat and bones of the game is just not there. Everything prior to Endgame and Wilds has no incentive to craft gear or strategize, which is the point of Monster Hunter. I was using random shit until Tempered Monsters. Low rank is an afterthought. You can't even access the low rank map, and high rank itself is so short it's over before you make a full set. It has the least meaningful progression in the series. You bump rush to the endgame without realizing, only to find that Team A brilliantly decided to bring back relic weapons, the mechanic that nobody liked. They're the best option for most of the weapon types, which means that every other weapon you made is irrelevant the moment you unlock them. The new darling flagship, Tempered Arcveld, gives you the most rewards, which makes hunting any other monster a pointless exercise. And that's it, that's your endgame. You kill Tempered Arcveld forever to make Artian weapons and re-roll them to get the best RNG as their best in slot if you roll perfectly. It's a goddamn joke, one that any designer should have foreseen. And even better, this is their billionth title overall and the third to rely on games as a service model. They should know how to make good endgames by now. And before anybody says anything about the previous games launching in a similar state, you would only say this if you started with World or Rise. Games like Portable Third had plenty to do despite not having G rank. Now you can say it's harder to make a game now compared to the 2-polygon monsters of 2007, and I'll say that this game costs $70 goddamn and they need to adhere to the precedent they themselves set with this series, which is known for its longevity and content to do.
So don't pull the "but you got your money's worth in 50 hours" bullshit.
Capcom is banking entirely on the inevitable expansion and title updates to fix all this, and I think that is an unethical, anti-consumer stance to take. Throughout this video, I did not give Capcom anywhere near as much shit as they deserved for that 10-hour torture they call a campaign and the buggy, barely working mess they released. Major issues that would ruin the reputation of other companies, Capcom can get away with.
And I did not even nitpick about regressions from World, such as less attention to detail where there once was. But the complete lack of sheer purpose in the game is where the line is drawn. It is inexcusable. The Gathering Hub and Kitchen are coming in a title update very soon as of this video's date.
That cannot have been done in such a short time, which tells me it just didn't make it to release.
I mean, fuck. Zoshia, the game's main goddamn boss, has no gear and has no rematch beyond the campaign. That too has left title updates. I have no words. He has no high rank variant.
The common theory is that Capcom did this out of fiduciary reasons as the Japanese fiscal year starts in April, though I don't know of its veracity. All I can say is that despite all my endless love for this series, I cannot recommend this game the way it is. I'm sure the vast majority of misgivings here will eventually be made whole in time, and you should wait for that.
I just hope that they use this new beginning as a chance to not make the same mistakes with incoming content, such as power creep gear making everything prior irrelevant, bullshit lobby raid mechanics that ruin fights, terrible RNG weapons, and so on. Oh wait, they already did 2 of these things at launch. Yeah, Capcom is not really known for learning from their mistakes.
And with each mainline title breaking sales records, they're not going to get the incentive to change.
But a complete fanboy I remain, and one day I'll probably fondly remember this game. And if you're watching this years later, chances are it has reached that potential, and you're thinking, what the fuck is this guy on about?